I should have told her. There were 1,000 moments where I could have, each one a fleeting chance to speak, to open my mouth and let the words fall out. But I didn't. I was too afraid of rejection, of embarrassment, of something nameless that always caught in my throat whenever I saw her. So instead, I held my silence, waiting for a perfect moment that never came. Now the words are trapped inside me forever. Her name was Eliza, the blacksmith's daughter. Strong-willed, stubborn, and as fiery as the forge she grew up around. Everyone in our village knew her as a force of nature, a girl who could swing a hammer as easily as she laughed. But to me, she was something more. She was everything. The brightness in a place that had long been covered by the shadow of the mountains. She had a way of looking at you like she could see through all the layers, stripping away everything false until you were laid bare before her. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, and I loved her for it. I loved her long before I could even admit it to myself. But as the seasons passed and the years turned, I watched her from a distance, always too scared to close the gap between us. What could I offer a girl like her? I was just a farm boy, nothing special, just a pair of hands and a head full of unsaid words. It's funny, isn't it? How we wait, how we convince ourselves there's always more time, more chances. But then one day, you wake up, and the words you've held onto for so long become dust, scattered on the wind, and there's nothing you can do to take them back. The day the Tongueless Ones came to our village, I knew something was wrong. It was late in the afternoon, and I had gone into town to deliver some vegetables to the innkeeper. It was a small task, one I'd done 100 times before, but something felt different that day. The air was thick, heavy, in a way that made the back of my neck prickle with unease. The sky was overcast, the clouds hanging low, almost brushing the tops of the mountains. As I made my way through the village square, I noticed people standing still, looking around with confused expressions. At first, I thought it was just the odd weather making everyone uneasy. But then I saw them, the strangers, the ones without mouths. They moved slowly, almost lazily, like they weren't in any kind of rush. Their clothes were simple, plain, nothing remarkable. But their faces, that's what stopped me in my tracks. They were smooth, featureless, where their mouths should have been. It wasn't like they were born without lips. It was more as if something had wiped their faces clean, leaving behind only blank skin where the ability to speak had once been. At first, I thought it must be some kind of deformity. Maybe they were travelers from another land, or maybe it was an affliction I'd never heard of. But as they walked through the square, the villagers started to fall silent. Not out of respect or curiosity, but out of fear. You could feel it in the air, the way it crept in like a fog, thickening with each step the strangers took. I should have turned around then. I should have run back to the safety of the fields, far away from whatever curse was settling over our village. But I stayed. I stayed because of Eliza. She was standing in the doorway of her father's forge when I saw her, her brow furrowed as she watched the strangers pass. She was always brave like that, never one to back down from a mystery, never one to cower in the face of the unknown. But there was something about the way she stood there that made my stomach twist into knots. Eliza, I called to her, my voice low, hesitant. She turned to me, her eyes flicking from the stranger's back to mine. For a moment, she looked as though she was going to say something, but no words came out. Her mouth moved, forming shapes, but there was nothing, just silence. My heart stuttered in my chest. I took a step forward, unsure of what was happening. I'd never seen her like that before. Eliza wasn't the kind of girl who let fear control her, but there she was, standing frozen in the doorway, her voice stolen from her. I tried to say something else, to call to her again, but the words caught in my throat. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The air felt thick, like I was trying to breathe through mud. My tongue felt heavy, my throat constricting as I struggled to speak. I could feel it, deep inside me, a weight pressing down, making it impossible to form words. And then I heard it, a voice not outside but inside my head. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone's voice I recognized. It was soft, smooth, almost soothing in its tone, but it carried with it a sense of finality. You don't need to speak anymore. I recoiled, stumbling back a step. The voice wasn't coming from the strangers. It was coming from inside me. My thoughts, once sharp and clear, were beginning to blur, the edges of my mind becoming fuzzy and indistinct. The tongueless ones had drawn closer, their blank faces turned toward the villagers as they moved in a slow, deliberate circle around the square. I wanted to shout, to warn everyone, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. I could feel it slipping away like sand through my fingers, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hold on to it. Panic surged through me. I turned and ran back toward the forge, back toward Eliza. She was still standing there, her eyes wide with fear, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I reached out to her, but before I could touch her, she shook her head. Her voice wasn't in the air. It was in my mind just like the other voice had been. But this time, it wasn't soothing. It was raw, desperate, pleading. "Don't come near me." I stopped, my hand falling back to my side. She was trying to protect me, trying to keep me from falling under the same curse that had stolen her voice. But it was too late. I could feel it inside me now, twisting, coiling, stealing the words from my lips. The days that followed were like a bad dream, the kind you can't wake up from no matter how hard you try. The tongueless ones didn't leave the village. They stayed, moving quietly through the streets, watching us, though they didn't seem to be looking for anything. It was as if they were waiting for something, waiting for us to accept the silence. At first, people tried to fight it. They gathered in the town square, shouting at the strangers, demanding answers. But as the days passed, the shouting grew quieter. One by one, the villagers lost their voices. It started slowly, a hesitation here, a stutter there, but before long it became impossible to speak at all. It was like the very act of trying to speak made the curse stronger. The more you struggled, the faster the words disappeared. I stopped trying. The fear of losing everything kept me quiet. I couldn't afford to lose what little was left of me. Eliza stopped coming to the forge. I would go to see her sometimes, standing outside her father's workshop, watching as the smoke billowed from the chimney. But she never came out. Her father had stopped speaking too. He would sit outside the forge, staring at the ground, his mouth moving silently as if he were trying to remember what it felt like to speak. The village was dying, not from hunger or sickness, but from silence. I would lie awake at night, the weight of my unsaid words pressing down on me like a stone. I wanted to tell Eliza that I loved her, that I'd always loved her, but now I couldn't. The chance was gone, stolen by the tongueless ones and their cursed silence. I had waited too long, and now the words were stuck inside me, never to be spoken. I dreamed of her sometimes, of her voice, the way it used to sound. In my dreams, she would laugh, the sound filling the air like music, and I would reach out to her, wanting to hold on to that sound forever. But every time I got close, she would vanish, leaving me alone in the dark. I should have told her. One night as I lay in bed, I heard something outside my window. It was a faint rustling sound, like footsteps on the gravel path. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. The village had been quiet for so long that any sound, no matter how small, felt like a disruption. I crept to the window and looked out, my breath catching in my throat. There, standing in the moonlight, was Eliza. She was standing alone in the middle of the road, her face turned toward my window. Her eyes were wide, her expression blank, and her mouth was moving, though no sound came out. I knew she couldn't speak, none of us could, but seeing her like that, standing so still, sent a chill down my spine. I opened the window and leaned out, desperate to call to her, to ask her what was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. I was trapped in my own silence, just like she was. She raised her hand slowly and pointed toward the edge of the village, where the mountains loomed like sentinels in the distance. I didn't understand at first, but then I saw them, the tongueless ones. They were standing at the edge of the trees, their smooth, featureless faces turned toward us, watching. Eliza turned and started walking toward them. I panicked. I couldn't let her go with them. Couldn't let her disappear into the forest like so many others had. I ran out of the house, my feet pounding against the dirt as I chased after her. But no matter how fast I ran, she was always just out of reach. The tongueless ones didn't move. They stood there, waiting for her to join them. And as she got closer, I saw something change in her eyes. They were empty now, blank, just like theirs. She wasn't Eliza anymore. She was becoming one of them. I stopped, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. I couldn't save her. I had waited too long, and now she was gone. The tongueless ones turned and disappeared into the trees, taking her with them. That was the last time I saw her. The village is silent now. No one speaks, no one dares to. The tongueless ones still walk among us, their presence a constant reminder of what we've lost. They don't need to hurt us, not physically. They've already taken everything that matters. I spend my days in the fields, tending to the crops in silence. The words I should have said weigh heavy on my mind, a constant reminder of my failure. I should have told her, I should have spoken when I had the chance. But now it's too late. The words are gone, and so is she. Sometimes late at night, I still hear her voice. It's faint, just a whisper on the wind, but it's there. I know it's not real, just a trick of my mind, but I hold on to it anyway. It's all I have left. I loved her. I just wish I'd told her before the silence took us both.